What's up everyone, I'm Tim and this is my channel 40 Times Around, where we talk about everything related to motorcycles, camping, traveling, and adventure. And today we're going to talk about what is, in my opinion, the ideal warm weather sleeping bag for motorcycle camping. Stick around. Alright, so we're going to talk about my choice for a sleeping bag for warm weather motorcycle camping. And it's going to come from a company called Snugpack. Now, I'm actually a really big fan of their products. They're an independently owned British-based company. They've been in business for about 40 years, and they have international recognition for the quality of their product. One really amazing thing about this company is that they have long-standing contracts with many government defense agencies for their sleeping bags and their clothing, which I think is pretty cool. Now, they have such a wide range of pretty much everything you could be looking for. Sleeping bags, tents, hammocks, jackets, backpacks, clothes, any kind of travel accessories. It's a really great company, definitely worth checking out some of the stuff they have available. Now, I've gone through all of their sleeping bags, filtered through all the stats to find what I think is the ideal one for warm weather. And they do have quite a selection. So I do recommend that you guys look through their products because I'm sure they'll have something to fit whatever your needs are. Alright, so this is the Travelpak 2 from Snugpack, and this is my choice for warm weather motorcycle camping. And I've actually used this sleeping bag quite a bit. I actually used it in some colder weather too, and it's not great for cold weather. And actually on one trip, I happened to be carrying two of them. It was nice because it wasn't one big bulky item, and with the two of them combined, I could either use one as a sleeping pad and use the other one as a sleeping bag, or I could actually double up on them, get a lot more warmth out of it. One really appealing factor about this sleeping bag is that it already comes with a compressible sack. And this isn't always the case when you buy a new sleeping bag, which means you have to spend more money on a compressible sack, and that's kind of annoying. So it's cool that you don't have to do that with this sleeping bag. As you can see, you can get this thing to a pretty impressive pack size. Now, the factory says that you can get it down to 7 by 7 inches. I think I've gotten it pretty close to that, and that is pretty small for a sleeping bag. Now, you can actually get this small enough to fit in a saddlebag with room to spare, which I think is a huge advantage for motorcycle camping. Now, another thing you can do when you're packing this is, because it's so highly compressible, you can actually just take it out of the stuff sack and just kind of tuck it in between everything in your saddlebag. This way it ends up taking up a lot less space and saves you a lot of volume. Now, like I said, this is the Travelpak 2. This is part of a 4-part series that Snugpack has, and it's just kind of specifically designed for traveling and extended use. Now, all 4 of the Travelpak series are great products. I have just found that this one happens to be the perfect balance for what I was looking for in terms of weight, price, comfort, temperature rating, and pack size. So this Snugpack comes in at about $41, which I think is super reasonable for all the features and the great specs, which I will get into. Like I said, you can pack it down to 7 by 7 inches, and it weighs in at 2.44 pounds, which is pretty light. Now, this sleeping bag has a comfort temp rating of 37 degrees, and it can go as low as 26, but I certainly don't recommend it. Probably a little closer to 34 degrees is about the lowest I would go. So one thing I would consider if you're gonna go with a sleeping bag this lightweight, and if you're covering some ground where there's a chance you might run into some cooler temperatures, then you should really consider taking a sleeping bag liner. And actually, you may want to consider taking one anyway if it's an extended trip. And I'll explain why in a bit, but in terms of cold weather, what I like to do is use a silk sleeping bag liner, because this will add about 10 degrees of warmth to your sleeping bag. Another great thing is that it's a lot easier to clean a liner than it is to clean the whole sleeping bag. This is going to make your sleeping bag last a lot longer. Now, the dimensions on this sleeping bag, when it's all stretched out, at the shoulders, you're going to be getting about 32 inches. Now, down at the feet, you're going to be getting about 15 inches wide. And the overall length of the sleeping bag is 87 inches. Okay, so here's the Snugpack Travelpak 2 all stretched out. One thing I really love about this bag is that every single feature on it has multiple purposes, and it's just packed solid with cool features and technology that's put into this sleeping bag. Now, to start off with, let's talk about this outer shell. This outer fabric is what's called micro diamond fiber ripstop. That's what's going to make it water repellent and super lightweight and durable. Now, another cool thing that Snugpack did with this is they actually did a fabric treatment on the inside and outside fabrics called Paratex. This is basically going to make it antimicrobial and antibacterial. Now, this is where you're going to get your long-term use out of it without it getting nasty so quick. So what that's going to do is it's going to reduce odors, reduce the need to be washing it constantly, which is going to make the sleeping bag last longer. Now, another cool thing about Paratex fabric is that it's going to be moisture wicking and highly breathable, which is going to help you when you're sweating on a hot night. Now, this bag is filled with what is called Travel Soft, which is actually Snugpack's proprietary insulation, What this means is that it's going to be ultra lightweight and high loft, so it's going to fluff out real nice once you take it out of the bag. For not a lot of weight, that's a pretty great feature and super compressible. Another cool thing about this sleeping bag, a feature that kind of comes from the filling and the outer fabric that it's made with, is that it's going to actually retain heat even when it's wet. Now, I'm pretty sure what they were designing this series for was more tropical use, where you're potentially running into monsoon seasons, a lot of rain, humidity. Now, I actually bought this because I was planning on going to South America, and this to me just seemed like the perfect bag for something like that. Now, another great thing that kind of goes hand in hand with that is that you can just wash this. Just throw it right in the washer. You're not going to get that from a down sleeping bag. So some of the additional features on this sleeping bag are going to be a chunky zipper, which is going to keep it from snagging constantly. And it's also going to make it a lot easier to zip and unzip and get started. It's also actually a two-way zip, so at night if you're hot and you just want to maybe take one foot out, you can actually start zipping it from the bottom up and then open up that space for your foot. Now, it's also got a draw cord string around the hood and a mosquito net, which I think is really great because if you're out in warm weather and you want to skip the tent, you're going to be bug-free in that situation. Now, this sleeping bag also has a draft collar, which is just going to keep cold air out. It has an inner pocket, which is kind of nice, and I've learned recently you can actually put some hand warmers in there on a cold night, and you can even keep your cell phone in there. Now, this is going to be important, especially if it's really cold, because your phone's not going to hold a charge if it's super cold out. And this way, by keeping it in this pocket, you can actually keep it closer to your body heat, and it will retain a charge better. Another feature that I found to be really useful is that it actually has these hanging dry loops, so that if you do get it wet or damp, or you just finished washing it and you want to hang it out to dry, you have these little loops right here, and you can just kind of hang it from a tree or wherever, which I think is super useful. Now, before we wrap it up here, this is actually the silk liner that I mentioned, and as you can see, it's pretty thin. You're going to get about 10 degrees of warmth with this, and it also packs really, really small, almost next to nothing. And for an extra 10 degrees, they're not super expensive, and like I said, it's so much easier to throw this in the wash and dry it out, preventing having to clean this so often. Another awesome thing with this silk liner is that on those really hot nights, you can actually use this as a sheet and just sleep right on top of the sleeping bag. Just another added bonus to having a liner. Now, there's a few different types of sleeping bag liners you could use, and I'll probably do a more extensive video on all the different types of liners and their nuances, but just to really quickly touch on why I like the silk ones so much is because of the properties of silk, it's actually going to retain heat better when it's cold, and it's going to be more breathable when it's hot, as well as absorb a lot more of your sweat on those really hot nights. And that's the Snugpak Travelpak 2. I hope you guys got something out of this video. If you did, make sure you hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe if you guys want to see more videos about motorcycles, camping, traveling, and adventure. Don't forget to hit the little bell, that way you guys don't miss anything whenever I post something new. Thanks for watching. See you soon.